Hello and welcome.
That's so good. That's so good.
Well, on that note, then, welcome to the Church of Mark. We have Mimi Bonson with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
This is great. It's great to have you on the show. And you're in town. You're doing a special event.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Maybe tell us about the event so we can get people out to the show.
Yeah. So tomorrow I'm playing at Hugh's Room for the first time ever. And it's like a women headlining festival type of show because International Women's Day is coming up.
Right.
So I think we're about 8 women. We're all artists in our own right. And I just feel really honored that I get to be part of this because a lot of the artists on the bill are artists that I look up to. So it's happening at Hugh's Room tomorrow night. And it's put on by my good friend Andrea Ramallo.
Great.
Yeah.
And who are some of the acts besides yourself and Andrea, of course?
So there's Amanda Rayom, Tanya Joy, Caroline Brooks from The Good Lovelies. I think Andrea's going to do a few songs. Sky Wallace, one of my pals.
Great.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of us. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how many? You're just doing a few songs each?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Well, you know how it is when you're on a
Right.
gig, you get 3 songs and then you're warmed up and you're ready to go.
And then you're ready to go. Okay, right.
So we get 3 songs and then we have a group song together, which is awesome.
Okay, and you're playing like on your own, or will you have Ryan with you playing drums? Or
Well, Ryan's got another gig, so there's
Okay.
also another, I guess, International Women's Day gig happening at the Cameron House. So he's going to be playing with Natasha Fisher, who's
Okay,
also
wow.
a friend of ours.
Great.
And I say ours because I know you guys are probably friends. So tomorrow I'll be playing solo.
Okay.
And it's weird because since January, I've been playing more solo shows than I have with Ryan, which is not something I do a lot.
Right,
so I'm
right.
like, okay, this will be the last of the solo shows. Love doing it, but I do miss Ryan, you know.
because you have such a great sound as a duo. We've seen you
Thanks,
a few
man.
different times. We saw your showcase, and I've watched some of your shows online as well. And it's just such a full sound with only 2 people. So what's the secret?
Well, you know what? We worked really hard over the last couple years because touring as a band, as you know, is becoming more and more expensive. And I feel really grateful that I get to tour with my husband so we can, you know, share some of the costs. So it's like, how can we make as much sound as possible for 2 people?
Right.
So Ryan has some triggers that he has on an SPDX pad.
Okay.
We have some tracks, some bass samples going on, and I have some effects on my guitar too, and I have a octave pedal, and I'm just trying to like fill the space
Great.
as much as we can so we do sound like a band. So if we're on a big stage or a smaller stage, it's kind of consistent in that way.
Right.
We have a new guitar player now over
Oh.
the last year, which is awesome.
Okay. Who is it? Do you wanna
So
give
it's
him a plug?
Anthony King.
Okay.
He's in Edmonton.
All right.
So some of the shows we get to invite Anthony out, and he does the little fairy dust in between. It's
Awesome.
great, but yeah.
That's great because it's such a full sound with 2 people. It's just
Thanks.
it still blows me away.
I appreciate that.
And so it's easy for you to travel, like you said. Now I saw some photos. You guys were sleeping in the back of your minivan.
Yeah, my camper van.
Okay, your camper
We
van.
drove all the way out to Winnipeg and back last year. So we used to have a really big camper van that was older than me, and it died. We drove it into the ground. So now we have like a little camper van that just fits 2 gnomes, some gear, and the bench folds out into a bed.
Oh, very nice.
I love the like road life, van life a little bit. Then you can like cook your own food. You can
True. That's
sleep
right.
wherever you want. You can drive as much as you want, and you don't have to depend so much on hotels all the time, which help with costs.
Yeah, because hotels now, I mean, depending where you are, they're like $200-300 a night,
Yeah.
and that's not even for like a nice hotel. That's just
Yeah.
for like the Super 8 motel.
Yeah, the Crumble Inn.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And then what about like gas and stuff? Like I know, I don't drive, so I don't know how much gas is. Is gas getting expensive to travel
It is.
to? Or
It is. But when we tour, I try and map out like all the reserve gases. So
excellent.
I prefer to give my money to res gas
Absolutely.
stations, and plus it's cheaper for us as well. So we kind of map it out and try and stop at those as much as we can. But I mean, it is expensive, and even feeding 2 people,
Right,
2
right.
humans who like good food, you know, it's expensive. So
Right.
we're always trying to think of like a responsible way to tour as much as we can, because touring is hard on the earth, and then how to keep costs down,
Right.
and also how to like be well rested to do a good job.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
those are like three.
Right. So have you seen that, has the touring landscape changed a lot since the pandemic lockdowns? Because I know when the pandemic and lockdowns lifted, there was kind of this backlog of artists trying to get into different venues, festivals, other events, but they were offering, you know, first right of refusal, of course, to all the artists that they had to postpone from 2020 and 2021. Do you see that kind of petering out now or getting better? Or is there still this struggle for these few little, say, coveted festival spots?
It's interesting because so before the pandemic, we were pretty grassroots. We would spend a lot of time on the road, and I was just taking whatever gigs I could. And I would say over the last 5 years or so, we've kind of built our team around us, and we've been able to go from like, you know, bar, brewery gigs to like theater and festival gigs, which is really good, you know, building up towards something.
Right.
So last year was our busiest year yet, ever, which is amazing. And then this year I'm finding and I was talking to my publicist, Beth, about this, there's a lot of artists who are kind of coming back from pandemic times, like who kind of were like, oh, I'm going to go over here. And now they're coming back. So it feels like it's a bit more competitive than it was the last 2 years.
Right.
And there's a lot of like headline acts that are coming back. So for people like me who are still kind of considered emerging artists, I'm like, I hope there's still space for us because we love playing and we love touring, right?
That's right.
And you kind of work hard over the years to keep that momentum going. So I'm hoping that there's still spaces, but I also recognize like festivals are struggling too with their finances and grants. So I think it's a hard environment for everyone, but everyone's got their heart in the right place. So hopefully it kind of works out.
Oh, that's great. And you're working with an agent, you had mentioned before we started rolling. Do you want to give them a plug?
Yeah. So AIM Booking Agency. I work with Nicole.
Oh, awesome.
And she came to my album release show, which was in April last year, which you came to. And fourth wall plug, yeah. And she saw our show, and I had been following her for a long time and kind of a big fan of the artists that she works with. So this is my first time having an agent. I've never had that before, and I really love it. I feel like she's really got our back. I feel so supportive. I have a female publicist. I have a female booking agent. You know, my team, I feel like it's all people that kind of think and feel the same way that I do. Right. And we all want to work really hard. So I feel really like safe and comfortable, and that's really important to me. That's
great to have that support and the team that believes in doing in what you're doing, of course.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I think for me, like, especially as a young Indig Franco woman, in the last 10 years, I'd say it's really important for me to feel safe.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And how do you feel sort of the landscape is for safety moving forward? Like, you know, the future, I know things have gotten weird, especially here in Toronto. Like our TTC, violence on the TTC is up like 46%, and ridership is down 40%. So it seems like there's a lot more violence and stuff in today's society. Are you kind of wary of that as
100%.
well? Okay, right.
100%. And as a like small, short human,
right.
I'm always thinking about that. So I have a Rottweiler. I got a Rottweiler when I was living in Toronto, and she's turning 9 now.
Oh, okay. Great.
And that gives me a really big sense of safety, just having her. And we had to move from the city. So we live kind of in the forest now, in the bush. Right. Not only because it was expensive, but because it was just feeling a little unbalanced.
Right.
And I think like there is a lot of things going on in the world, and I think people's hearts are really heavy right now.
They are.
So I'm like, maybe we need to drink more water. Maybe we need to like focus some energy into like growing food and how we take care of ourselves. And I'm always thinking about those things.
Right.
I also think like mushrooms will save the world, like not magic mushrooms, but like edible mushrooms and growing mushrooms, and thinking about mushrooms and the way they work with trees and stuff. I'm like,
all about mushrooms and mycelium.
Yeah, 100%. If we shift our focus a little bit and distract ourselves from the like chaos of the world, I'm like, yeah, there's hope still, but it is intimidating out there, I think. It
is. I think it can be intimidating, like you said, and it sometimes it seems like the world is going down the toilet. But I am optimistic. I am hopeful for the future.
Totally.
I think this stage that we're in is kind of like giving birth.
Yeah.
Sometimes birth is hard, sometimes it's messy, but at the end there's something beautiful.
And there's something new.
That's right. So I think once we get through this sort of messy, difficult stage, we will have that sort of new era of hope and hopefully love and connection, all that to move forward.
Well, I think like I'm not a scientist or history buff or anything, but just
I am. I tell people I am at parties,
I'm an expert. But I think intuitively, I think about like what we all went through, a pandemic, which is super chaotic. I think I anticipated like some kind of chaos coming out of that because it was so difficult for some people, super lucrative for other people, very weird. Right. So I think we're in that period of like people are trying to figure out what we're supposed to do now. Right. And I have hope that we'll like take care of the land and each other better. But I think we need to like hurry up and get there. You know what I mean? Like that's sincerely how I feel. I'm like, all right, let's go.
I think people are slowly waking up. I think you'll see a lot more people returning, maybe even to the land and learning how to grow their own, fruits and vegetables and take care of themselves. Kind of like how you're doing. Yeah. Now we've been following your posts online and we love everything you're doing. So what are some of the crops that you're planting and that you're harvesting each year?
Yeah, well, I'm actually excited to get home next week because I get to start another crop of seedlings. Okay. So we try to grow, we're working towards 50% of our own food. And when I'm home, which is, half the time, we're still eating a lot of stuff from our garden. Oh. So if I can like keep working on that and not have to rely so much on a grocery store, that's like my ultimate goal. And some of the crops, I'm trying really hard to bring back crops from my community or other communities that were kind of lost. So like beans and squash. Okay. So I have Algonquin pumpkins. I have Abenaki cranberry beans, which were really hard to find. So I'm trying to bring back some of these things, crops that have like significance to me. Right. And the Three Sisters garden. I'm such a super fan of Three Sisters gardening. So those kind of practices and just having that connection with the land, I think has healed a lot of my heart and really inspired a lot of my music. Right. And so it must be a lot of work, I would imagine, doing all that, getting the crops ready, planting the seeds, also dealing with winter. You must get a lot of snowfall out there. So what's a typical day look like when you're at home? So in the wintertime, this is a great question. And I wish we had more snow than we did. We had a weird winter. I'm pretty sure my garlic's growing already. Okay. I'm like, stop. So in the wintertime, our living room is our studio. So this year, not so much. Last year, we did a lot of recording, and we were hoping to get more of that done this year. But so typical day, wake up, let our dog out, of course. And then I either jump in my office or we jump into the studio or jump into a rehearsal. And I have a schedule on our fridge. So I work with Ryan, my husband. And if I'm doing admin for a day, I'm doing admin. I have a really hard time doing like creative and business. So I like to block off days. So it's not bouncing back from like rehearsal to email to like grant writing to recording. Like I like to separate my hats a little bit. So I do that, and I like to turn my brain off at like 4 or 5 or 6, and then deep winter, I love going into my sewing cabin. I started making our own performance clothes. So I have like ribbon skirts and matching dress shirts for Ryan. Oh, wow. So I've been sewing my brains out this winter. And then at this time of the year, we have a little greenhouse that's attached to our house. So in the evenings, I'll go into garden mode and just like get my hands in the dirt, sow some seeds, that kind of stuff to just kind of turn my brain off. Because I also think that's really important. It is. Yeah. You can't keep, going. Of course, that's right. You need that break. Yeah, I like to shut off my brain around 4 or 5 as well. Yeah, it's like dinner time, and then you unwind a a little bit. Yeah. At exactly 4:20 every day, I try to go and smoke a joint. So perfect. At 4:20, I'm out of. He's got an out of the office email bounce back. Right, I'm out of the office. Out of the office. That's right. In the summertime, it's a bit more chaotic, as you know. Being on the road, you're like, okay, I'm home for 2 days, and then I'm gone for 2 weeks, and then I'm home for 2 days. So it's a lot of running around harvesting stuff, and then like repacking your gear. And then getting out on the road and then running around harvesting stuff and then that cycle of stuff. Right. But it takes a team, It does. We're 2 people, so and do you have any animals where you live? Like, do they need any taken care of while you're gone? Oh man, I spent a big chunk on house sitters. Oh. We have a house sitter who's amazing, and last summer I think she was home more than I was. Like we were gone on the road for like 4 months. Wow. On and off, and she'd be there for 3 weeks, we'd be home for a week, she'd be back. So I have a senior dog and 2 senior cats who require a lot of love. But no horses or llamas or anything, as much as
Nothing
I
like
would
that.
love
Okay.
that.
All right. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
That's right, yeah.
I want to tour a lot. And then, and then we'll figure it out. If that happens. I'm putting that into the universe, and I'm like, okay, well, I could do alpacas when I'm older, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
Road alpacas, not as cute.
Okay. I don't know what any of those look like, really. I just have a kind of a stereotypical version of alpacas and llamas.
Yeah, could you imagine like a gear trolley and then like a little horse buggy full of like these cute little llamas?
That's right. And can't you like make, don't they have wool from? Okay. Yeah.
And
So
I
multi-purpose.
think they're like a little bit high maintenance.
Okay, are they?
I already have high maintenance animals. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm cut off.
All right, very good. Now, you mentioned you have a studio at home. Is that where you have been recording? Because I know back in the fall, you did something incredible and you released 2 full EPs.
Yeah. So right before the pandemic started, Ryan and I started collecting the skills of recording our own music, because like this idea of self-sufficiency in our life, I wanted to translate that to my work as well. And like tasks that I could source out, I'd like to be able to have my say or be able to do it myself. So we started collecting gear and skills and working on that. And then when we moved to our house in 2020, we just decided our living room would be our studio. We recorded 2. Well, we actually recorded 3 records in our living room now, because we put out an instrumental record in 2022. And recording in the comfort of my home as a like young woman is just so much more comfortable for me. And I love big studios, but being able to try stuff and get a little weird, and you're like, I don't really want other people to hear this. Okay, It works. Okay, good. You never know what comes, and to have like access to all of your things. We have like so many instruments, as I know you can relate. It's really like empowering, and it's really fun. So we're starting production of a new album.
Oh, wow.
And like being able to incorporate our friends who also have home studios, or if we can get together, like there's just so much more flexibility and flow. And for me, it feels alive, like music is alive to me. So being able to create it in that way was like really empowering, and just like being able to translate the things you hear in your head and in your heart into like your studio is not really something I ever had before. So I was like, I'm happy I get to do that. Yeah,
that's right. The convenience, you don't have to worry about the hourly rate, looking at your clock.
And you're on somebody else's time.
That's right.
And like I was lucky that I got to work with amazing musicians and producers before that, who are always really supportive. But sometimes I'm not always comfortable like trying weird stuff in front of people that I'm not married to.
That's right.
So that's my favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're working on recording projects, and then you have shows you're working on. You have a tour coming up this spring, summer. Maybe tell us about that.
Yeah. So we have a showcase at Pacific Contact in Kelowna. Have you ever been to that one?
I have not.
Okay, me neither. So we're flying all the way to Kelowna to play like 18 minutes.
Okay.
Woo!
All right.
And we have a show at the NAC 4th stage, which is like our home away from home. I love that room. So that's in April, and we have a show coming up in Toronto in April too. I would plug the dates, but I gotta check my calendar.
Okay.
But I'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah, keep us posted for sure.
And in May, we have a 10-day tour in France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
and you've been to France previously.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we toured for the first time in France in September of last year. And then we showcased at the MAMA conference in Paris in October. And because I put out a French album last year, and I work a little bit in the Franco-Ontarian world. It's just been a really fun market. And thinking about like how to develop other markets other than Canada. Love playing here. Love touring here. But I also want to like tour a lot in the future. So thinking of like sowing the seeds in other places. So France, we'll see what happens. It's super fun, and we were super well received because I can speak French. I'd love to see what other markets there are,
Great. So what are some other markets you'd love to go to? Say a genie came out of this bottle and said, hey, where do you want to go?
I'm all about putting things out into the universe. I'd love to play some shows in Australia and New Zealand, because I love like we have a little bit of the island vibes, a little bit of reggae, roots. Like I love the idea of people dancing during our shows, especially at festivals. And what I've seen and what I've heard from Australia is that there is that vibe.
There is.
So I'd love to find a way to get out there.
Yeah, Australia's beautiful. I haven't been there like in a decade, but it is wonderful. I know Lacey Hill goes there all the time, it seems.
Yeah, Lacey's got it going on.
Absolutely, yeah. Australia's cool.
My big dream, I don't know if you know John Butler Trio. Amazing. Like, if I could grow up and be John Butler, I would.
Okay.
So my big dream is if I could open for John Butler one day. Putting that out into the world. Here, for the first time. I'd be like, I'm good. I'll grow potatoes now. You know, like, I'm good. If I can open for him, I'm good. You know? Okay. That's my dream. And he's Australian. So.
And he's Australian. Okay, well, there you go.
That's the link there.
That's the link. All right. So other than, I guess, growing your own food, doing music and traveling, do you have any other hobbies that maybe people don't know about?
Yeah, so I do a lot of work hobbies. I do a lot of workshops in schools. Okay. So this week I just wrapped up 10 days with the Aurora Cultural Center, doing a concert and a workshop with grade fours, which was awesome.
And what age are grade fours roughly?
I think they were between 8 and 10 today. 8 and 10, okay. Yeah, 8 and they like to argue about who's the oldest, which is so much fun because I tell them I'm 100 years old and I win. And they believe me. That's the weird part. That's weird. But I love doing either gardening workshops or songwriting workshops, but they're not you need to know how to play an instrument. It's how can we write a song to express ourselves and to feel good. Right. So I love doing that. And then outside of work, I'm really into sewing and finding other ways to be more self-sufficient. Right. So because we burn a lot of fuel on the road, I'm always trying to find ways to be more eco-responsible. Right. So making my own clothes from recycled materials or making food that I've grown and learning how to process and can things or making herbal medicines from my garden and foraging, those kinds of things. I love spending time outside and learning. So learning is my passion.
It should be, it should be everyone's passion, right? You should always be learning.
Totally.
Have you ever thought of going electric with touring instead of gasoline?
I thought about it. And actually we bought a car, I guess it'll be 2 years ago. Okay. And we weighed the pros and cons and I just don't know enough. And I feel like the technology, you know how it is when you're 9.5 hours on the road in Timmins.
That's right.
In a snowstorm.
And there's no charging stations.
Yeah,
that's right.
And we'll drive till 3 in the morning sometimes.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So if they ever come up with an electric camper van or something that's good for winter travel in our, and I mean, even going electric in our home, I don't know if we could heat our home solar panels. Oh, but it's definitely something when it gets there, I'm definitely interested. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to start saving my pennies though.
That's right. I know. A lot of these new technologies are also very expensive. I was looking into solar and just buying the solar panel and the converter is quite a bit of money. But once you buy it, I guess it lasts hopefully for a lifetime. I don't know.
It's like prepaying your hydro bill for 25 years.
That's true. And I heard if you generate enough electricity, then you give it back to the grid and they pay you apparently.
So I'd be interested to see if that actually works out. Yeah. And I have a bit of beef with the idea that electric cars are the solution to our climate emergency. Right. And I'm not scientific or anything, but I'm pretty sure you have to mine those things out of the ground. That's and I come from a mining town. I'm from Sudbury. So I'm pretty sure that's actually, there's other ways
It's mostly underage miners mining those minerals that we need for both electric cars and our cell phones and computers.
Yeah. And I mean, those are tools that we definitely need. But this idea that technology is what's going to help us. I think a connection to the land. That's for me though. But a strong connection to the land, a revamp of our food system and just rethinking some of our habits.
Absolutely.
I think, and going back to our traditional ways, and that's relearning our traditional ways. That's something that's super important to me. So
it is, because I'm wary about putting all of our faith in technology, because not if it'll fail, but when it will fail, and 100%. It will fail, because we've seen examples throughout history, even back in the big power outage of, was it 2003? Anyways, the power went out here for several days and everyone was kind of screwed. No one knew what to do. And although that was kind of nice because it shut everything down and it created this sense of community. But yeah, I'm not up to putting all my faith in technology. I don't even own a cell phone.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is the extent of my technology, the computer. And this computer actually is hardwired. It's not even Wi-Fi to the internet.
Awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I'm old-fashioned that way.
Yeah, I like that though. And you know what? Like when we have these power outages, it forces you to think about it. We have power outages all the time where we live. And a couple weeks ago, it was really cold out, and we had a power outage for about 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
And we have a battery that powers our pellet stove, but it only lasts about 8 hours.
Okay.
And I was like, now what? You know, now what do we do? So we have we got this little 11-inch by 12-inch wood burning stove as like emergency. But I'm like, what about water? What about food?
Right.
What about like animal? Like, I don't know if I have the skills yet to like survive if something happens. So I'm like, maybe it's time to start thinking about those things, you know?
That's right. They say you should have, I think, like 36 hours of fresh water and canned food in case there's some kind of...
well, I got 7 cases of tomato sauce if anybody's interested.
Okay, all right. Homemade tomato sauce? All right, that's awesome.
Homegrown,
We'll take some.
Place an order. I'll get walking.
Great. So I guess what kind of challenges have you seen in the modern sort of music industry? Because there's been a lot of, we were just talking about technology. In a way, technology has solved a lot of problems for musicians because many years ago, when I started in the business, there was no internet. So if I wanted to book a tour, I had to go to the library and then look up the phone books. Because in the library, if you go to the reference section, they have phone books for every town and city in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And there's like a whole rack of phone books. So if you want to do a tour, say you want to go to Winnipeg and Regina, well, you got to go look up those phone books.
And you have
to
get on the phone and talk to a human.
That's right. And then you'd have to send an old-fashioned press kit, which would cost you like $100 to make because they needed an 8x10 photo and there had to be a CD in there and all this printing, right? But nowadays, it's just an EPK. I could just email the artistic director or submit, their form, and it's pretty much like that. But as we were talking with technology and maybe not us putting so much reliance on it because now we have things like Spotify and streaming, which is just sucking the revenue streams
100%.
Out of musicians' livelihoods. Because back in the old days, and I guess today musicians still sell CDs at shows. Yeah. But it seems like those sales are going down unless you're selling them at a show because people are on the old streaming.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Are there any other challenges you see, or is this the major challenge? Is these sort of technological capitalistic machines kind of taking up all the money from artists and not giving back to the content creators?
I definitely think that's something, and like we hear that echoed in all musician communities. Like that's for sure a thing, and. I realized this year, like my first record came out 10 years ago. And I don't think social media was such an important tool 10 years ago for putting out a record.
That's right.
And I remember my first album release show 10 years ago in my hometown was sold out. And I'm like, nobody's even heard this. Like, I'm just like this kid, And now there's a couple things that come to mind when you ask me this question. Now I think, like, I'm a bit of an old lady on the inside too because I don't have TikTok. And I don't prioritize social media content as much as I probably should because I'm a real life person. Right. But I think with that, it's a beautiful tool, wonderful tool, but there's also a lot of music, a lot of people making amazing music. So there's a lot of noise and sometimes it feels a little hopeless, I think, or like you feel like you're just like not getting through to people. Right. And I think that's like a personal challenge for a lot of artists that I've talked to where you feel like I don't know if people hear, I don't know if people see. And I'm like, well, if you put your head down and you stay on the road and you stay true to who you are, it'll work out. But I think that idea of a lot of noise going on is a really different challenge. There's a lot of amazing music coming out, but there's a lot of music coming out.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. And how do you cut through the noise? Like, that's a really interesting question. There's always different ways and different advice, but that's one thing. And I think because of that, maybe connecting with audiences can be interesting. Like, we play a lot. And sometimes getting people out to shows can be challenging because maybe people are more comfortable at home watching Netflix. Maybe people don't have access to funds to come out to shows like they used to. Like, I wonder how it was like in the early parts of your career if you would show up to a town where people have never heard you? Like, would people just come out because they knew music was going on?
It depends on what region you're in. Like if you were up, say, Northwestern Ontario, because they don't get a lot of, say, acts. But down here, Toronto, Southern Ontario,
it's always kind of been like that.
It's not so
which
bad,
I get that in big cities. But I think getting people out and like when people do come out, I'm like, thanks for trusting me. Thanks for coming out, spending money. Like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming out. But it is a challenge. And I mean, even for us, it's hard for us to want to go out because it's expensive. And
that's right.
You have to plan it out, right?
That's right.
So there's a lot of different things going on.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. Because I heard maybe a year or two ago at a presentation, someone was giving at a conference. They said 100,000 songs are released a day worldwide. So you can imagine if you're a radio programmer, whether you're at campus radio or say you're at the Indigiverse or say you're at NCI FM, you have all this new music being thrown at you every week, but you maybe only have space for 3 or 4 new spots on the playlist. So if I'm a programmer, how would I pick who to put on there? I would look at maybe charts, earshot. I would read articles, try to learn more about the artist, but it's impossible to read about everybody. So I guess I'm not sure what the question is here. So how do you cut through some of the noise? Because it seems like you've done that very well.
Thank you. Thanks. That's really nice. And I think like another question I have to that is like, how do you not take it personally as an artist, right?
That's right.
And I've seen you post this on Facebook. Not everybody's going to love your music.
Right.
You know?
That's
and
true.
I think that's a really important message, but also like you have to love your music.
That's
and
right.
you have to be like proud of the work that you put out there. And when I think music is a superpower because you're putting out energy and vibration into the universe. And I think that's really important. And people should never stop doing that, whether it's for like business or for your own self. Like if that feels good to you, you should do that.
Absolutely.
But cutting through the noise. So for the first time I worked with a publicist. So I worked with Beth at What's the Story, and she had so many great ideas. We had so many great conversations, and I felt really supported in that way. So that seemed to help a lot. And I think the most important thing for me is building relationships because I've been around for a little bit. I have friendships at Radio Canada, and I have people who've supported me at CBC, and to just like maintain those relationships, those friendships,
That's right.
like in this industry, it's easy to feel like you're not part of something, but then you go somewhere and you have all these friends. Like at FMO, I'm like, oh my God, I know everybody here and I love everybody here. And hey, how's it going? How's your music? To like build those relationships, I think has been like a really empowering and really solid way to just float.
Absolutely. It's always been about relationships too. And that's the way I think to build any business, whether you're in the music business or whether you're opening up a law firm or a plumbing,
word of mouth.
Word of mouth, that's right.
I think like being pleasant and also like supporting each other.
That's right.
I think is really cool because I want people who have worked with us, whether you're a sound guy or a booker, I want you to feel like we did a good job, you did a good job, together we did a good job. Thank you so much. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Like I love that attitude and I see it a lot, which is great.
That's great. And that's sort of the attitude to have. Because sometimes in this business, there's egos and that gets kind of weird. And I try to, stay away from those people.
Yeah. Well, I realized like in the last couple of years, being on stage and performing, when I was younger, I thought it was about me. And I was always worried about what I would say, what I would wear, what my hair was doing, And then I realized it has absolutely nothing to do with me, actually. When I'm on stage, it's about the people who came, and I want to take care of them, and I want them to have a good time. So it's not about me at all. It's about the audience who took time and money to come out to see you.
That's right.
And building those relationships. Like I've toured through Thunder Bay. I have a family who adopted me in Thunder Bay and made us tacos, and we keep in touch. And you make these connections and these friendships in the industry, but also with your audience. That's like my favorite.
That is excellent. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So what do you see, the indigenous music industry is kind of blossoming into this great sort of wonderful industry. You have a lot of great artists. There's a lot of great record labels out there and other sort of industry players. So what do you think is the biggest challenge currently in the indigenous music scene?
That's a good question. The biggest challenge? Well, I think there's a lot of awesome music coming out. There's a lot of music coming out.
There is. Yeah.
And it's like, I want to support all of my friends and all of these people because I think they're amazing. But there's, again, that thing is like cutting through so much noise, not noise, but so much music coming out. Right. So there's that. And I think one of the challenges I feel is having the audience understand that Indigenous music is not trad music only.
That's right.
You know, and a lot of people, for me, will come to our shows who are not Indigenous and ask me to sing in Abenaki. And I'm like, I'd love to. I wish I could, you know, but I don't speak my language. And here's the reason why. So maybe that's not a struggle or a challenge within the community, but it's definitely something I think a lot of us face.
Right. It's like the genre has been stereotyped.
Yeah,
kind of.
which is weird because like some of my friends make the best pop punk music, the best country music, the best pop music, jazz music. Like there's so much amazing music. And I think like up and there's this beautiful wave and it's really empowering, really inspiring. But I'm trying to think of like what's a challenge within the industry. I don't know.
There's also, I mean, we've been talking about recently in the past couple of shows about identity and pretendians.
Yeah.
There's
okay,
that big challenge.
That's a challenge.
Both from not just our perspective of artists, but the perspective from venues and festivals.
Yeah.
Because I've had a couple of conversations recently from, you know, mainstream music festivals that say they're afraid now in booking Indigenous artists because they don't want to book a pretendian and then they don't want to be canceled. And so how
I think there's a lot of fear there.
There is a lot of fear
on both sides.
So how do we get past this?
I don't know. That's a great question. And actually, thanks for bringing that. I was like, what are my issues here? That's actually something that I think about and I talk about a lot because it hurts everyone.
Absolutely.
And for me, so in my family, like I'm mixed. I was always honest about where I come from. And having that, like my community welcome us and having that reconnection has been so important to me and my family. And then when there's people who are taking these words and tainting them, it makes you embarrassed. It makes you feel like you don't belong.
Right.
And I really don't like that, you know, and reclaiming something in my family has been so important, you know, so having that like, oh, you're reclaiming, oh, you're mixed is like, it's really hurtful to me.
Right.
And I think that sense of belonging is so important. And our community is so different. We all have so many different perspectives and stories and backgrounds. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. So anybody who wants to come in and kind of taint that or take some of that away, I think is just really yucky. And I mean, I don't have the answers. I'm still trying to process like the whole Buffy St. Marie thing. Like I grieved. I was not okay about that. I don't know how you felt, but I was really like hurt by that.
I think we all were for sure.
Yeah. So I don't even know what the answer is, but I know that if you always speak honestly about who you are and where you come from, then you can never be caught in a lie.
That's true. That's true.
And I've always been honest for me about, you know, I'm Abenaki. I grew up outside my community, but my community knows who I am and I know who they are.
Right.
You know, and to have that connection and that honesty of like, I don't speak my language because I grew up outside of my res, you know? I think those are really valuable conversations to have for everyone. People who are learning about what it means to be Indigenous, people who are on the outside who want to learn about Indigenous stories. Like, I think it's good for everyone to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Honesty is like such a beautiful gift. Not always easy, but beautiful gift, right?
That's right. Not always easy in this business.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's something that mainstream Canada may not be aware of when it comes to Indigenous music or artists? What's something that you'd like to see mainstream Canada be kind of more aware of about what we're doing?
Yeah, well, I think mainstream Canada should listen because there's so many beautiful artists, so much beautiful music in so many different genres. And I think, you know, programming artists for the music that they make and not the boxes that they check is like... that's the best. For me, like, I'd hope that the bookings that I get and the audiences that I get are there because they like my music and not because I feel a gap, you know?
Right.
So those are kind of things that I think about. mainstream Canada, we make great music, and we make like all kinds of music.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think mainstream Canada really likes your music too, because I was just looking at your Spotify, and you got like thousands of streams on songs.
It's so wild.
It's obviously connecting with people, I think. Yeah.
And I think like that connection in music is so human for everyone. And like, of course we have all these tools like Spotify, whatever, social media, all these things, but I can't ignore the fact that music is so human, and to have a connection through music is so natural to us.
Right.
And that's always going to be at the root of it, I think. For
Absolutely.
me, during live music or even the music I put out, I want there to be a human connection there. Whether it's in story or in textures or in sounds and all those things. Like, that's what really matters to me.
That's right. And it's very genuine, and that comes across in your music.
That's nice.
And
Thanks.
in your performances too.
Thanks.
Whenever I think the last time I saw you play, I couldn't help but being happy myself.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Yay. I want to invite people into my world and be like, let's drink water and be happy.
So we're coming up to the end of the show, and I always ask guests this question. Say I'm a young person, say I'm living on the res, or maybe I'm living here in Toronto, and I'm a young Indigenous musician, or I'm aspiring to be one. What kind of advice would you have for someone like me that wants to get into the music business and wants to kind of do what you're doing?
Well, I think when I was in my early 20s and people would ask me that question, I'd be like, if you want to do it, you can do it. And I love that idea, but I also think it's a bit naive. I think the first thing I would say is you are enough. If you want to make music and you have this vibration inside of you and that's how you connect to the world, 100% you should follow that. It's not an easy path, but if you're like me and you feel like this is what you are meant to do, then we have to honor those gifts that we have. So that's number one. And number two is like, don't ask permission. For so many years in my career, I was like, is this okay? I hope this is okay. I hope people like me. And I'm like, I don't need to ask permission to be who I am and to do the music that I do. And it took me a long time and a lot of work to get to that.
Right.
So you are completely enough just the way you are, and you don't have to ask permission from anyone. You can just do what you feel is right.
Absolutely. Because so many people suffer from imposter syndrome. They think, I'm not good enough to be on the stage.
That.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel that. Even in the Indigenous identity conversation, like I do feel that. And so many of us do feel that.
Right.
But we can put that energy into the creative side. We can bring that into our stories. We can talk about it, put it out there, because you're not alone if you feel that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So what's next for Mimi then?
So we're working on another album because we just love making music. And I'm looking forward to a really nice summer tour. It's shaping up to be beautiful.
Great.
The tour in France in May, some summer festivals and touring across Canada.
Can you announce any dates yet, or that's still...
Yeah.
Okay,
and Nicole
I get
might
it.
give me a shout after this.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm just excited. And I'm excited to have our guitar player come on more shows so we can perform as a trio,
That's awesome.
And yeah, maybe we get to share the stage sometime.
Absolutely.
I'd love that.
That'd be great. Fantastic.
Yeah, let's put that into the world.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, you hear that? Book us both for the show.
Yeah. I'm in. Love it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been fantastic talking to you, and be sure to drop in anytime you're in the city. And your show is at Hughes Room. That is Thursday, March, what's the date? 7th, okay. And that is from...
I think it starts at 7 or 7:30.
Okay.
You know what?
Details
it's on the beautiful internet.
Okay, details will be on the internet. We'll post those details later when we post the show. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Leonid, thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for watching.